Today is April 29th,
No.
2018.
April 9th.
Can we start over?
There's a,
We're going to start again. Good evening and welcome. Today is Monday, April 9th, 2018. It is 7:04 p.m. because I've goofed up a few times. This is the regular city council meeting for the city of St. Peter. I will call the meeting to order. Will all please join in the pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone should have a copy of the agenda in front of them. Are there any changes to the agenda? If not, is there a motion for approval?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
All in favor of the agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Next, we have minutes from our now March 26, 2018 regular meeting. Those minutes appear on pages 5 through 7. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes? Is there a motion for approval?
Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor of the minutes as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. We also have minutes from our March 29th, 2018 special meeting. Those minutes appear on pages 8 and 9. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes? If not, is there a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion to approve. Second.
All in favor of the minutes from that March 29th, 2018 meeting, please signify by saying approved. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those minutes are approved. Next, we have a public hearing. And public hearing is in regard to the Nicollet County campus rezoning, and Mr. Lilly is going to give us some background. We're going to call to order the public hearing at 7:06 p.m. And Todd, if you want to start to give us some background first.
Russ will give the background. Let me provide some of the rules for the hearing. The council's adopted rules a couple of years ago for the hearing. Of course, there's a staff presentation, and then the applicant has an opportunity to present their facts, and then we're open for public comment. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes. They have to be recognized by the mayor. And sometimes action is taken at the same council meeting, and that's the plan for this one. Sometimes it's taken at a different meeting. That is not the plan for this one. I think that's the short list of the rules, so we'll turn it over to Russ.
Mayor, members of the City Council, the Nicollet County Board of Commissioners paid the appropriate fee, and the appropriate notice has been published, posted, and mailed as required by statute for the consideration of the rezoning of certain properties. It is a 3-step process for Nicollet County, and it is their hope ultimately to end up in approval for the construction of an off-street parking facility upon the properties that they're seeking to rezone. The first step of the process was undertaken on March 12th, where you provided for the vacation of the Myrtle Street right-of-way as it would lie east of the Front Street right-of-way. The right-of-way is it extended into the floodplain, if you will. You provided the rezoning. That matter has been recorded and is of record at this point. Tonight you are asked to consider the rezoning of the south half of the Myrtle vacated right-of-way, as well as 601 South Front Street and 106 East Myrtle Street. Those properties at this moment are zoned RP1, Residential Professional Office. The north half of the Myrtle Street right-of-way and 523 South Front Street, lying north of the Myrtle Street right-of-way, are also owned by Nicollet County. Those are currently zoned Central Business District. If the county is to consider the construction of a off-street parking facility at that location, it would be necessary for them to have the south half of the property rezoned, as parking lots are not allowed to be considered within an RP1 zoning district. So that is their request. Public Works have reviewed the matter as to the provision of utilities and the circulation of both vehicular and pedestrian traffic, and neither one, the provision of utilities or the circulation, should be adversely impacted should you provide for the rezoning as petitioned by the county. As I noted, it would be their intent to construct an off-street parking facility. If you give the approval tonight and the property is rezoned, it's anticipated then that they would immediately make application for a conditional use permit then to allow for a parking lot upon the property that would be zoned Central Business District. That would require Planning Commission consideration as well as then a consideration of the Board of Zoning Appeals, which would make the final determination. I should note, as Mr. Kwame did at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, that the rezoning cannot be conditional, cannot be negotiated. So if the property is rezoned Central Business District, the owner of the property could reasonably seek permits for any of the uses allowed under the Central Business District. However, I will note that the county on their campus master plan suggests that this area would be developed as a parking, and I do not believe that they would have any intent to alter from that. The Planning Commission considered the matter at their meeting earlier this month, and the Planning Commission has recommended that you provide the rezoning as petitioned by Nicollet County. Mr. Mayor, the applicant is not here. Ryan Crush, the county administrator, called this afternoon and he was not able to come. I didn't believe it was necessary for the applicant to make any type of presentation. I would answer, well, we can do that when we come back and consider on the business. So if you have any questions for me, or we can do it later.
We will do it later.
I have a
We will do it
question.
now.
I have one question. In your presentation, Rush, you said that parking lots are not allowed in an RP1 district. They, of course, are allowed on your own property. This parking lot is not on their property, but across the street, and that's why it's handled differently.
Yes, the parking lot that they have would be accessory to the courthouse operations, the administrative functions, the court functions, and the human service functions. Given that they do not have a principal structure at this location, there's no principal structure for the parking to be accessory to. So in this instance, the parking is the principal use.
As we have Russ here and started, anybody else have anything you want to ask now, Susie?
I've got a couple questions, so I can do that now or later?
Yes, no, do it now.
So I have a lot of thoughts about this. It's quite clear in conversations with other council members and also with folks who work at the county building that they need better off-street parking in this area. And so I see the need very clearly to have parking. I have a couple concerns about the fact that it's so close to the floodplain, that we're increasing impervious surface so close to a sensitive area, that we're rezoning to do it. I think that we can, I'm happy to consider all of those things and still recognize that the county has this need and to accommodate that need. But the other concern that I have is that the county currently operates or owns parking lots right near the center of town and has been fairly unwilling to share those with the public when the county buildings are not in use. So for instance, on the weekends, if there's a large event, city parking lots are available for overflow parking for, I don't know, a parade or an event at Minnesota Square Park or something along those lines. The county has not been as willing to make its parking lots available. I think that if we're going to be making these accommodations to allow the county to build more parking in our downtown area, that we should press them to be more considerate of how that parking is allowed to be used by the rest of the community.
Let me address that one.
Sure.
I think there is ample opportunity to make sure that they understand that message. We have a liaison meeting coming up here in just a couple of short weeks. I'm very confident that the two liaison members can more than adequately address that issue with the county commissioners directly. I don't know that from a regulatory standpoint we have an opportunity to regulate it in that way or condition a modification to the land use as was discussed earlier. There have been previous discussions that I've been a party to, but again, I think the liaison committee provides a great opportunity to express that want by, frankly, many folks that also pay county taxes.
What can we do? Is there anything that we can request of them as far as stormwater management goes? What do we put in place in a case like this where it's a standalone parking lot, and what requirements do we have for that?
If I could, I would defer to the Public Works Director who deals with these issues and has been involved in some of the preliminary planning with this. So Pete, if you wouldn't mind.
When the county comes in with a plan for development, we will control, or ask them to control both volume and velocity from the natural green space that it is now. So they'll have a design standard they'll have to follow, and they'll have to meet that standard in order for the permit to be approved. So even though it drains towards the floodplain, they'll still have an outlet that will be regulated.
And that's a part of our ordinance, so this isn't just something that is on the fly. We have an ordinance, a very strict ordinance related to stormwater that they have to comply with, as does any developer.
And
They
don't,
have retained an engineer to design to those standards, and they're well aware of it. So we've had a couple of conversations already, so they're willing to comply with that.
don't they have to come once more before the city to obtain a conditional use permit for this construction
They'll come
facility?
before the planning commission, and the planning commission will make a recommendation to the Board of Zoning Appeals, so it would not come back to the city council for further consideration.
So one of the conditions that could be put on that by the planning commission could be what we wanted with stormwater to meet your concerns.
If I could, certainly you can do it that way. You already have an ordinance in place that
Sure.
requires that.
Yes, usually we'd be silent on the matter, not to suggest that there are certain instances where they wouldn't have to comply. I will also note, the county had expressed some reservations early about using their parking lot, but I don't believe they've taken any action to prohibit it. So I don't think they've said no, they haven't re-signed it, but they did have some early concerns about liability. They've also indicated that this parking lot then would be available for public events.
When we set conditions, we often do belt and suspender by saying, and in addition, one of the conditions is you have to follow all the
Follow the
ordinances
rules.
the city has in place.
Right.
So,
Thank you.
Anyone else? We will have a chance to discuss a little later in the meeting. Thank you. Is there anyone present that would like to speak for or against Nicollet County campus rezoning request? Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing at 7:15 PM Monday, April 9th, 2018. Next, we will address visitors. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council on any agenda item? Seeing no one, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council on any matter whatsoever? Seeing no one, we will move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda begins in detail on page 11 and concludes with the resolution on pages 25 and 26, and includes the following budget purchases in excess of $7,500. To H&L Masabi, Inc. for cutting edges for $9,223.04. We have the following license renewals: temporary 3-2 on-sale beer for the St. Peter Chamber of Commerce for Minnesota Square for 7/4/18. Tree worker licenses, all for the same dates, 5/1 to 4/30/19. To L&E Tree Service, Morshing's Tree Service, Perfection Landscaping and Patio, Quality Tree Service, Tool Time Handyman. We have the following regular appointments, employee appointments. First, we have Sally Reham Vogel for the Director of Finance and Treasurer at $84,000 per year. We have Sue Prax for part-time transit support specialist at $15.38 per hour, and Pat Yeager as a part-time transit support specialist at $16.50 per hour. We have following seasonal employee appointments. There are 21 of them. They will all report to Public Works under certain areas. Like I said, there's 21. They range in salary from $10.25 an hour to $11 per hour. We have a drop box that was previously used for utility payments, which will be surplus property and disposed of. Hopefully, someone will buy it. Plus the regular schedule of disbursements for March 22nd, 2018 through April 4th, 2018. Are there any questions, comments about the consent agenda? Steve?
Todd, the three appointments, our director is full-time, and the two transit personnel are part-time. Could you tell me what their probationary periods are on all three of these individuals?
Yes, so on the full-time position for your, if you approve it, new finance director / treasurer, it will be for 6 months. There's certainly criteria that they'd have to pass at that time, so it could be extended, but 6 months. The part-time positions that you have, forgive me if my memory might not be exactly right, but my recollection is 520 hours of service is the probationary time frame for those.
Okay, thank you.
One point out, it was in our packet, but there's a difference in wage for the part-time transit, and that is because Mr. Yeager had previous driver experience, so that is the reason for that. Any other questions or comments? If not, is there a motion for approval?
So move.
Second.
Now, any more questions? Call the roll, please, Barbara.
Councilmember Grant.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Fong.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Next, we go to unfinished business for the 2018 hospital project funding. And Todd is going to give us a bunch of background here.
Mayor and members, this is a project that you've worked on for quite some time, so I won't get into a lot of details about the hospital project itself. I'm going to try and focus on the resolutions that you have in front of you. You have 9 resolutions in front of you, and so how would I hope you would look at this is that there are 2 resolutions for each loan, so there are 4 sets of 2. The reason that it's not one big loan is because USDA has guidelines related to how much they want under any given loan document, and they want it to be $10 million or less. So they have broken this up into 4 loans for you. One at 9.9 million, one at 9.8, one at 9.7, and one at 3.9 million. If you add that all up, it's about $33 million, and that's where we're at related to the final, what we've talked about previously as being that final long-term mortgage on the construction of the hospital. As you might recall, there'll be short-term, what we might consider construction financing as a part of this as well. That tallies up 8 resolutions. USDA prefers and has said very clearly that they don't want us to modify the documents that they provided us for these loans. They do not draw up the final loan documents. Those would be drawn up by your bond counsel. Therefore, there is a 9th resolution that essentially says, well, this first set of 4, there's 3 or 4 things that we're not going to agree to as a part of that. And so that 9th resolution directs staff to correct those items as a part of the closing documents that we will agree to and that will be reviewed by the Office of Inspector General for USDA as the final documentation is put together. So that's really the basis for these. I'm happy to answer questions as best as I can for all the sets, but we do need separate action on each and every one of them. Again, there are 4 sets of 2 resolutions for each loan. Again, 9.9, 9.8, 9.7, and 3.9. And then the 9th resolution is directing staff to ensure that we meet the criteria that was set by council and by hospital commission as a part of the closing documents. An example of that would be is that the city is not pledging, we are not pledging a general tax levy as a part of the repayment. It has to be paid out of revenue that's generated by the hospital. That is not clear as a part of the initial 4 sets of resolutions. So that's one of the items that we're really working on to make sure has clarity as a part of that 9th resolution. Mayor and members, I can go into a lot more detail if you'd like, but you've talked about the process overall. I would mention one last thing related to that process. This does not a hospital build. You still have lots of other things that take place. I wish I could tell you that there was just one action that you took and boom, it all happened. There's a series of actions that occur. To be clear, related to these resolutions, the 4 sets of 2, the 8 resolutions, you'll be required, or a future council at some point out 24 to 36 months will be required to pass a resolution closing on the loan as well. So this isn't your last opportunity to see this, but frankly, once you take action here, while it's not cut in stone, it's cut into something pretty hard, and it would take a little bit to move it and to massage it or change it dramatically. So that's why we want to be very careful and have that 9th resolution in place and be appropriate. By the way, that resolution was drafted by your bond counsel, who will be drafting the closing documents as a part of this. I do expect that those closing documents will be completed and agreed to within the next couple of months, although you won't see action on them for, again, 24 plus months out. Happy to answer questions that you have as best I can, Mayor members.
Anyone? I have a question, you know, each of these basically have the two of them, or there's two for each one. The difference being, if you could just,
Yeah. The difference being, frankly, that USDA prefers that the documentation be handled this way. We normally wouldn't do it this way. We'd handle it in one fell swoop. But they have two resolutions, one of which is articulating the items related to the loan documentation, and one is setting aside or providing the resources to the city.
all right? Any other questions? Okay, the first one, the resolution for indebtedness of $9,900,000 appears on pages 29 through 33. Is there a motion for approval?
How often do you get to move approval for a $10 million loan?
Well, just once tonight.
Just once tonight. Well, I want to do that. I want to move approval of that.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Quinn.
Aye.
Mayor Zine.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Along with that is therefore the resolution for providing a portion of the cost of acquiring, constructing, and enlarging, and improving the existing hospital. That resolution appears on pages 34 through 36. Is there a motion for approval?
Is there a means within Robert's Rules of Order that allows us to just take turns on all of these things?
Yes, there is. It's probably faster just to use your normal process, and USDA would prefer that there not be one resolution encompassing all of these.
To clarify, I was suggesting we just go around the table and take turns. So I will make that motion, Mayor.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Any questions or comments? Jeff,
Wait,
second.
Jeff.
Yeah.
Call.
Councilmember Quinn.
Aye.
Mayor Zine.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Next up, we have the resolution for the $9.8 million, not quite the intent of the 9.9. But are there any questions or comments on this one? If not, is there a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion to approve. $9.8 million for the hospital.
I'll second it.
Any questions or comments? Call the roll, please, clerk.
Mayor Zine.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Quinn.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have on pages 42 through 44, the resolution for providing for the cost of acquiring, constructing, and enlarging the hospital expansion. Is there a motion for approval?
I will make that motion to approve.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Any questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Quinn.
Aye.
Mayor Zine.
Aye. Resolution passes. Next up, we have on pages 45 through 49, the $9.7 million amount for expansion. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Quinn.
Aye.
Mayor Zine.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Resolution passes.
Whoops.
Next up, we have the adjoining incurrence of debt for the portion of acquiring and constructing and enlarging the hospital. That resolution appears on pages 50 to 52. Is there a motion for approval?
Move the resolution, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Quinn.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Next on pages 53 to 57, we have the incurrence of debt, principal amount of $3,920,000 for the hospital expansion. Is there a motion for approval?
That's a piece of cake. I'll move that one.
I'll second that. Any questions or comments? Call the roll.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Quinn.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Next on pages 50 to 60, 58 to 60, we have again, the purpose of providing a portion of cost for acquiring, constructing, and enlarging the hospital expansion. Again, the resolution appears on pages 58 through 60. Is there a motion for approval? I will move that resolution.
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
Any questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Quinn.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Next up, we have a resolution directing preparation of draft documents. As Todd had mentioned before, that resolution appears on pages 61 and 62. Are there any questions to begin with? If not, is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Any other questions or comments now? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Quinn.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Thank you.
So if this all goes to hell, now, they're coming after George, they're coming after the auditors, accountants who went through all the numbers and said this is gonna work, and now we each got our own fingerprints on it. Ain't, nobody gonna hide, be able to hide from this one.
Safety in numbers. Moving on, we have the Nicollet County campus rezoning request. Russ.
Mayor, members of the City Council, earlier in the meeting, you held a public hearing regarding Nicollet County Board of Commissioners petition seeking the rezoning of the vacated Myrtle Street, 601 South Front Street, and 106 East Myrtle Street from RP1 to Central Business District. Rather than go into a report again, I'd again answer any questions that you may have.
Russ, I have a question. What about the rest of that to the north?
That would stay within the flood zone, anything to the east.
Not to
That-
the east,
What's,
to the north.
so which properties in specific? 523 and the...
523 and 519.
Yep, those are currently zoned Central Business
Oh, they
District.
are, okay.
Yep, that would be, that's why they don't need to be rezoned.
Okay, thank you. I didn't notice that. Any more questions?
And the other half of the right-of-way road there, so between these two parcels and 523, what is that exactly? So they'll move,
The north half of the vacated right-of-way is zoned Central Business District.
oh, that's what you were just answering.
Yeah, because
I apologize.
the roads aren't, well, the roads are zoned, but if the district meets in the middle of the road, if that's where a boundary's at, or on a river, or unless other specifically designated, it's halfway mark of that roadway.
Any questions?
Mr. Mayor, can I ask
Steve?
a question? Russ, does the county have to raise the parking lot because it's in the floodplain, or can they just make it?
Yeah, we'll be in consultation with Mr. Olson from Bolton and Mank. He kind of administers the floodplain, but my understanding that the base of the parking lot, the surface of the parking lot will be raised a foot above the floodplain.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? The ordinance amending the St. Peter City Code, rezoning to the Central Business District. appears on pages 66 and 67. Is there a motion for approval?
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Any questions or comments? Call the vote.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Clement.
Aye.
Ordinance is approved. Next, we have a revolving loan request.
Mayor and members of City Council, in 2007, a $24,900 loan was made to Rachel Morris. She started the operations of the Pulse Fitness Studio on Broadway Avenue. That partially financed her startup costs with the acquisition of the equipment and the office functions and the point of sale and the typical startup costs. In 2012 then, the $13,214 balance was due via balloon payment at the conclusion of the 5th year. At that point, every single payment had been received as due, when due, and in the amount due without a single exception. And at that time, Ms. Moore undertook an expansion of the Pulse, began 24-hour operations, which required a card entry system, purchased some new equipment, and she took the balance of $13,214, added that with some new loan dollars to make a new loan in 2012 of $20,564. That was the expansion of the Pulse. The balance of that note was due in February via balloon payment. Ms. Moore, unable to provide for payment of the balloon, what she is doing is taking her profits and recognizing the competition within the town. She's reinvesting that, and she's on about a 5-year cycle to be replacing equipment. So she purchases it, sells it back basically to the person she bought it for, gets new equipment, runs it for 5 years, and typically is on a cycle. Correspondence has been received from the primary lender indicating that they're unable to provide additional credit at this point to be able to pay off the city's balance of the loan. The EDA subcommittee then and myself took a review of the Pulse financials. That's the delay and why we weren't able to do it in February, why we're waiting for the year-end financials to be accomplished. And we also reviewed the personal financial statement of the Moore household. The subcommittee and I reported to the EDA that the finances had no irregularities, any concerns, and that personal finances were sufficient to provide a meaningful personal guarantee of the note. The EDA then, after their consideration and dialogue, have recommended that you provide a 24-month extension to the balance of the Pulse Fitness loan and that all of the other terms and conditions of the loan remain unchanged. Again, Mr. Mayor, with your blessing, I'd answer any questions that you or your colleagues may have.
With my blessing, does anybody have any more questions?
Just a clarification, what is the outstanding balance right now,
I didn't write that in my scribble notes, but I think it's in my memo.
roughly?
I'm looking at the Merle Street memo, it's not in there.
No.
20,564.61.
I thought that was
Well, that
the.
was the 2012 loan. It's, I don't have, I think it's like $7,000 roughly.
So all I'm really asking is they've made significant, they've paid down a significant portion of the original 20,000 from 2012.
Yes, ma'am, and I
So
should
it's
report
not-
that since 2012, every payment has been received
Right.
as due, when due, and in the amount due without a
Right.
single exception. So they have
Sure.
an absolutely spotless, unblemished credit with
Perfect.
EDA.
And to further what I'm saying is, if they continue making payments at the level that they are, then we would expect this to still close out at some point.
Yeah, if they continued their regular payments, the 7,000,
Yeah.
I apologize, I didn't
No,
have it in my
that's
memo.
fine.
I know it was in the EDA one when I rewrote it for the council. I didn't include it, but yeah, it'll be significantly reduced again if
Right.
it comes back for 2 years for a repayment.
Well, that original loan in the resolution says 7992, what the original loan would if they would not have gotten a renewal or taken on more, combined the new loan. So, from the
7,990.
24.9, it was 79.
7992, that's the current balance.
Okay.
So,
Any other questions or comments? The resolution modifying the terms of the revolving loan to Rachel Moore doing business as the Pulse Fitness Studio appears on pages 70 and 71. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second it.
Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Carl,
Aye.
Councilmember Brand,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Graham,
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer,
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer,
Aye.
Mayor Ziegler.
Aye. Resolution passes. Thank you, Russ. Next up, we have construction standards modifications. Mr. Moulton.
Mayor Zeman and City Council, before you, you have 9 standard details that we are looking for your approval to upgrade. The first 7 are basically clarifications to contractors, minor details that are in there that would give the contractors clearer instruction on how to perform and install the standard details that they're dealing with. These arose during the past couple of years in dealing with our contractors, and the clarifications are requested by the contractor, and we work with our engineer to get those updated. 3019, as you can see in your packet here, is probably the most substantial change in how we do things. Our previous detail called for riprap at the end of the stormwater basin. We use, or a stormwater outlet pipe. We use that to diffuse stormwater quite a bit. We're going to a little different design in our process, diffusing in manhole structures and allowing for other dissipation in the velocity of stormwater. And as you can see, by adding the articulated block at the end of the outlets, we're able to maintain the basin a lot cheaper and not spend as much manual time doing so. The 2 details of 9004 and 9005 are tree planting details. May I note that one correction for both of those would be to add the collar height or area above the root base to approximately 1 inch above ground level. Just a clarification again as far as how deep they are planted. Most of the time when our trees come in number 10 containers, you'll see a dirt level. The tree should be properly planted in that container. That's a standard that's usually allowed. We're just going to add some clarification there. It's not on both of those drawings, but we would add that so it's clarified. We're asking for approval of the resolution on page 83, and I'm available for questions.
Questions? Steve?
Pete, what's riprap? I mean, that sounds like some of the members on the city council, but I'm just curious, what is
No,
that?
that's riff-raff.
Oh, excuse me.
Riprap is really what we were talking about at the end of the outlet pipe that we use to diffuse or to slow the water down as it enters the stormwater basin. It's a relatively cheap fix, but takes a little more maintenance. And so our goal would be to diffuse the velocity of the stormwater within the pipe, within the structures, and then create a smoother outlet so that the stormwater could flow and be maintained a little easier.
So is it a
If-
material?
Yeah, it's rock, 4 to
Okay.
6 inch rock.
It's a big pile of boulders.
Oh, all right. I thought it was some type of material of some
You'll
sort.
see it on the side of some of our dikes and at the end of our outlets.
Okay,
See
all
it
right,
on Lake Shores.
Yep.
all right. Okay, thank you.
I have a question too. On the pedestrian crosswalks,
Okay.
in some areas, like on 169, we have, there are like depressions where are there? Or maybe I'm mistaken on this. There are like little depressions where the actual white striping is laid in.
Right,
And I
they're
think the
round.
idea is that
Yep.
they will last longer with all the traffic going over top
Yep.
them. We don't have any standard like that for city-owned streets, do we? Everything is just painted straight onto the flat surface?
Right, it's the type of crosswalk where we're using a tape. A lot of times we will grind that down and install that tape. It's a more expensive installation. On most of our normal crosswalks for MSA routes and large collector streets, we just use the paint because it's easier to refresh each year.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Anyone else? The resolution approving construction standard details, there are 9 of them, appears on page 83. Is there a motion for approval?
Move approval.
Is there a
Second.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Call roll, please.
Councilmember Graham,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Graham,
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer,
Aye.
Councilmember Plummer,
Aye.
Mayor Zimmerman,
Aye.
Councilmember Garland.
Aye.
Resolution is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Chief Peters to talk to us about police vehicle purchases.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. On page 84, you'll see a memo in reference to purchase of 2 police cars this year. We're proposing that we again purchase Dodge Charger police vehicles at the fleet price, which is afforded us by loggers in St. Peter. A couple things I'll add quickly that I'm sure you have questions about is warranty. And the warranty is a standard bumper-to-bumper 3-year, 36-mile warranty.
36,000.
36,000-mile warranty. They also have a limited warranty, which is 5 years or 100,000 miles on the powertrain. However, limited means that Chrysler gets to decide if they pay for it or not, which is always an interesting process. And that only covers the powertrain, and it would cover a defect of any part or workmanship. And as I said, we've had that experience in the past where, well, we don't know if we'll pay for it, and someone from Chrysler comes and looks at it and says, well, we'll negotiate with you. It's been several years since it's happened. I believe it was on a transmission. They said, we'll pay for the transmission if you pay for the labor to install it. And our city mechanic went and picked up the transmission and installed it, so it worked out okay. I don't know if you have any questions. Can sure try to answer anything related to cars.
Anyone? Steve?
So, Chief, the vehicle that you end up surplusing, the last one, is that put out for auction, or how does that work?
Yeah. Well, a couple things can happen. We have the city mechanic kind of go through and decide, okay, this city staff car really needs to go away. So that'll get auctioned, and maybe one of the cars we're getting rid of is better than that one. So he kind of comes up with a list of what's working, what isn't, and anything else is declared surplus by you, and then it goes on min-bid auction, which has been pretty good for us. We've got some pretty decent prices for those vehicles.
Okay.
So it's kind of a pecking order of what works and what doesn't.
Okay. All right, thanks, Chief.
Anyone else?
Who installs all the lights and everything on these?
A company that is based in Oakdale, which now also has a building in Jordan. And you're asking me off the top of my head the name of that company, and I just can't remember what the name of it is at.
Okay. But they just you get the new cars and take them over there?
Yeah, yep, exactly.
Is that new equipment then, or do they?
It just depends. Some of it can be, usually it isn't.
Okay.
Some of it's old, if it doesn't work, it just gets thrown. Yeah.
Anyone else? Resolution approving purchase of police squad cars funded by equipment certificates and general fund. Here's on page 86, is there a motion for approval?
I'll make that motion. I'll second it.
Any questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Graham,
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer,
Aye.
Councilmember Plummer,
Aye.
Mayor Zimmerman,
Aye.
Councilmember Garland,
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Resolution passes.
Thank you.
Chief.
I might also just point out quickly that I got more questions than the $30-some million hospital So in 2 weeks, I'll come back with a new building
Well,
request.
You know where you pay your electric bill, or just put it in there, put them in there, and we'll try to get back to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
You're welcome.
We could have the same volume of meetings
Yeah.
for
There you go. That concludes our new business. First up, in the reports, I have a proclamation. The proclamation is for Arbor Day and Arbor Month. It says, whereas Minnesota's forest treasures were a significant attraction to early settlers because of their usefulness and the beautiful environment they protected, and whereas trees are an increasingly vital resource in Minnesota today, enriching our lives by purifying air and water, helping conserve soil and energy, serving as recreational settings, providing habitat for wildlife of all kinds, and making our cities more livable. And whereas Arbor Day was founded on April 10th, 1872 by J. Sterling Morton in Nebraska City, Nebraska, and whereas in 1876, Minnesota became the 4th state to adopt Arbor Day, and whereas the citizens of St. Peter have proudly participated in the celebration of Arbor Day and Arbor Month for many years. Now therefore, I, Charles Zeman, Mayor, City of St. Peter, Minnesota, do hereby proclaim April 27, 2018 as Arbor Day and May 2018 as Arbor Month in the city, and encourage citizens to participate in tree planting activities at their homes and businesses as the city plants trees in the Community Spirit Park during the month of May, in witness thereof. And I think everything else that I was going to mention, Todd, is on your list, so I'll let you go.
Mayor, members, the first one I'd like to provide some information on is the tornado commemoration event, just doing a recap of that. And we had a little bit over 800 folks that attended that event on the 29th, and so it was a wonderful turnout, and I think a well-received program. I do want to make sure that we thank Gustavus and the school district, Nicollet County, the Nicollet County Historical Society, and the Chamber for all being participants in the planning group that put that out. And I thought just a really, really nice event. Haven't heard a number of very positive comments. Yeah. So for those of you that were able to attend, and thanks a lot for being there. Just really nice event. The next one that I'd like to mention is Board of Equalization. There'll be a meeting on April 17th at 6 o'clock. So please be ready for that. We want to make sure that that gets on your calendar for April 17th, a little bit over a week from now.
And it's here, not at the courthouse.
Thank you, Barb. So in the governor's room.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. Also want to mention that Senator Tina Smith was here for a SOLAS meeting, and then I have to apologize to the mayor a little bit. The senator's team set up this meeting and missed a few folks on the email that was listing that off, and I didn't catch that. But we had a nice meeting related to SOLAS and also housing within the community, and a short tour of Maplewood Apartments as a part of one of the projects that the city's participated in, as is Minnesota Housing Finance and many others. And it's always great to be able to showcase some of those efforts that are going on and make very important points related to the kind of activities, housing activities specifically in this instance, that are going on within your community. We have a city-county meeting scheduled on April 25th. That will be in the Traverse de Sioux room downstairs at 3 o'clock. So for the two of you that are regular members of that, are appointed to that, a city-county meeting on April 25th in the Traverse de Sioux room at 3 o'clock. So that's, well, not under this room exactly, but it's on the lower floor of this building. So if you have questions about that, please let me know. We do have a pretty well-established agenda, but the meeting's a little bit out, so there could be some modifications to the agenda as we move forward. Also, I want to make sure that we have on your calendar, April 19th, an important joint Hospital Commission City Council activity. So this will be a time when the vast majority of bids are coming back for the hospital, and a little bit of the FF&E that's required for the construction. So our goal is to have your construction team, your builder's agent, and your construction manager will be available to go through the bid process with you, you and the Hospital Commission together. And then it's my hope that the Hospital Commission will meet in session to provide recommendations to you on what you should accept or not accept. And then you can take action based on those recommendations, whether you think you should accept it or not. And so that's very similar to the process that we used the last time for the structural steel and the excavation and the parking lot stuff that we did early on in the process.
This is at Helen White.
This will be at Helen White at the hospital, so that you can all fit together and you can see some of the graphics. It is at 5:30 for the hospital commission, and the city council joint getting that report. Then it's 6:15 for the commission, and it's 6:30 for the city council. So that's the goal, that's the timeline that we're trying to meet, and will be noticed appropriately.
That would be a Thursday.
That would be a Thursday, yes. Yeah. Mayor, members, that's all I have for reports for you this evening. Maybe I should mention, for those folks that didn't know, you had a meeting earlier this evening with the school board, a joint meeting. That meeting was recorded, and that'll be played on SPPA and on your YouTube channel as well. Oh, now that I'm talking about YouTube, I should mention the tornado commemoration event. That is online now. It will be coming on your YouTube channel, hopefully within the next week. You'll be able to click on your information on the YouTube channel. If you're a subscriber to the City of St. Peter, Minnesota YouTube channel, you'll be able to click on it and see that commemoration event. Again, if you wanted to see it again, or if you didn't get a chance to see it the first time for the public, it'll be a great opportunity to see it as well.
It's been on SPPA.
Yep.
In fact, I watched it the other night on Channel 7.
Oh, good.
Anyone else have anything else to add? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
All in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
So he's not ignoring this. Yes.